The history of rugby arises in the mid-19th century, as a sport derived from the so-called mob football, which was practiced without fixed rules in the British Isles, since medieval times. A traditional story tells that, in 1823, a rugby school student, the Englishman William Webb Ellis, cheated during a primitive football game, thus giving rise to the mentality that would later adopt the name of the school in which he was born. The rules drawn up by the students of the Rugby College date back to 1845, allowing the ball to be played with the hands, from which the current rules were derived. In 1863, the first rules of association football were drawn up in London, prohibiting touching the ball with the hands, definitively separating rugby football with the hands from association football without the hands. Since then, rugby gained relevance as an independent sport in the British Isles and territories that were colonies of the British Empire, such as Australia, New Zealand and South Africa. Outside of these territories, France has been the country with the greatest development, while in America and in Spanish-speaking countries, rugby found its greatest development in Argentina. In 1886, the International Rugby Board, today renamed World Rugby, was founded, which is the highest governing body of this sport worldwide. In 2017 it had 117 member national unions. The first international match was played in 1871 between the teams of Scotland and England. In 1882 both, plus Wales and Ireland, began to compete in the Four Nations tournament, and it represented the first international growth. Nowadays, the World Cup is held every 4 years, the third highest grossing competition globally, since 1987. Women's rugby began in the first half of the 20th century. In 1982 it had its first international match, and since 1991 it has held the World Cup, in addition to participating in the Olympic Games. It currently constitutes 25% of the individuals participating in rugby: referees, managers and players. In 1995 World Rugby allowed professionalization, a decision that it strongly opposed for years, expanding rugby over the years to new countries with a rugby tradition, such as the United States, Japan and South America. In 2016 the sport returned to the Olympic Games, in its 7-player modality. Invention during the 19th century, a process of defining the rules of football developed among private schools in England, a poorly defined game, which Spanish speakers called carnival football, which students played in each British town according to their own rules. Modern rugby and football, as well as other related sports, would emerge from this regulatory process. A tradition that emerged in 1876 attributes the invention of rugby to a theology student at Rugby College. According to the traditional story, in 1823, during a carnival football or soccer game, William Webb Ellis, in fine disobedience of the rules of football, took the ball with his hands and took it to the opponent's goal, scoring the goal. The historicity of the event has been repeatedly questioned, but it is officially accepted by the International Rugby Board as the first antecedent of modern rugby, and the trophy awarded to the winners of the Rugby World Cup bears its name. Regulation. In the middle of the 19th century, the need arose to unify the rules of the game and put them in writing. In the 1840s, the United Kingdom had developed the railway network that connected the cities of the island to each other, and one of its consequences was to promote and multiply intercollegiate sporting events. Despite the fact that the opponents agreed for each match on the rules to be followed, the students of English schools then began to write the rules, in order to unify them. The first school to do so was rugby, where football had been played in a very physical version, using tripping and crowding, hacking and maul, and allowing taking, passing and running with the ball in hands. The rules of rugby were written on August 28, 1845 by 3 students, William Delafield Arnold, W.W. Shirley, and Frederick Hutchins. It was made up of a series of recitals and 37 rules that constitute the first regulated antecedent of modern rugby. There are rules that would later indicate the identity of the game, such as the axe-shaped arcs, the conversion, the use of the hands to carry the ball, the offside rules, the knock on the scrummage, the mark, the hacking to kick, from the English verb to hack, to cut with an axe under the knees, etc. In the Pall Mall restaurant in London, on January 26, 1871, the first Rugby Football Federation was founded, the Rugby Football Union of England, then made up of 22 clubs. 3 lawyers who had been students at Rugby were in charge of drafting the first regulations, which were approved in June 1871. On March 27 of the same year, the first international match between England and Scotland was played in Edinburgh. In 1877 the number of players was reduced from 20 to 15 per team. In 1886 Scotland, Wales and Ireland founded the International Rugby Football Board (IRFB), the international governing body of the sport. In 2020, the Englishman Bill Beaumont was elected president of WR, after defeating Agustin Picotti. The Argentine wanted a restructuring of the international calendar, eliminating the mid- and end-of-year tours, to replace them with a World League divided into 3 sporting levels, with the intention of allowing greater revenue and development for weaker nations. The COVID-19 pandemic suspended competitions and the World Rugby Awards were not held. The American Super Rugby League had its first edition and had to be cancelled, while Super Rugby was divided to play locally, in Australia and New Zealand. In 2021 the Women's World Cup was cancelled and national competitions returned to almost normality. It was the second time Rugby 7s played in the Olympics.